Hey hockey parents and hockey coaches, Coach Garner here, and in this video I want to go over some youth hockey nutrition tactics that you can use to improve the performance of the kids out there that you're working with or your own kids that you've got in your own household. Now, youth nutrition, it's kind of a tricky topic, isn't it? There's a lot of gray area in it because a lot of people don't want to provide harsh guidelines for kids for obvious reasons. But at the same time, there's plenty of sports nutrition research done on adults and not done on kids. And we know that a kid just has a different physiological structure than an adult. Different hormone balance, different physical structure, different amount of muscle mass, different level of energy expenditure out in the ice, different level of energy expenditure on a daily basis, different stressors associated with school and bullying and all kinds of stuff. It's just a different physiology altogether. So we need to take what we can from the sports nutrition research and then do our best to filter it through the context of giving guidelines to a youth hockey player and making sure it makes sense, not just in the present time for them, but to foster healthy habits that are going to last a lifetime for them in this sport to help them increase their health, but also, of course, increase their hockey performance. Nutrition is an incredibly powerful tool to wield that can really help take anybody's hockey performance, youth or adult, to the absolute next level, even when just some small habits are introduced. And in this video, I want to go over the physiological aspects of nutrition for youth hockey players, but also the psychological aspects, because this is where a lot of people make the big mistakes and where you kind of hear some of the horror stories about the very aggressive guidelines being given to, say, like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and then they eventually just want to leave the sport because they're psychologically burnt out from never escaping on the ice, off the ice, hard guidelines. It just never ends. We don't want to be those people. We want to create healthy habits and a healthy environment that fosters future progression as well as present progression. But from a physical perspective, what can we do to help increase their physical performance in hockey? First off, and you probably saw this one coming, we can reduce their sugar intake. Kids' diets in modern times probably have more sugar in them than they ever have in the history of this planet. Through different fruit substitutes, fruit juices, through soda, through chocolates, through candies, through chocolate milk, through all kinds of different kind of snacks that they're having at school and at home. There is an incredible amount of sugar in youth athletes' everyday life. And if we can reduce sugar just a little bit in these athletes' life, then it's something that's really going to translate into more even-keeled energy levels throughout the day. Not as many blood sugar drops, which is going to result in that fit, that frustration, that kind of anger that seems to come out of nowhere. In many cases, it's just nutritionally related. So decreasing sugar as much as we can in small areas, in small amounts, is something that you're going to want to do. So, for example, instead of having a sugary breakfast cereal, we could have a well-structured omelet. That would make an incredible difference in nutrition. We're trading pure sugar for something that is a high-quality protein with high-quality fats and plenty of vitamins and minerals as well. I know a lot of you probably think, well, I get the good cereal. I get this kind of cereal. Isn't it good? Not really. Unless it's oatmeal, then it's not going to be good. A lot of cereals, they are packaged in something that appears good, but it's really just sugar that is disguised as something that's not sugar, like a maltodextrin, or you'll see a glucose or a fructose or anything, a galactose. You're going to see all of these different OSE types of ingredients on a box, and anytime you see OSE, it's almost always just a form of sugar, but since it's not straight up technical sugar, it's not going to appear as sugar on the label, even though it's metabolized in the exact same way. So if we can do very small things to reduce their daily sugar intake, we're going to be improving their body composition, improving their health, but also improving their energy, which is going to result in an improvement in performance. Does this mean we take away all of their sugar? Of course not. We're going to get into that a little bit in the psychological area, but think about the small areas where you can take away sugar that wouldn't be a large impact to their life, like swapping out a cereal with an omelet. Still absolutely something delicious, and they're going to have actually likely get better grades in school because of their increased energy, their more balanced energy, and there's not going to be a crash while they're in the classroom. Whereas that cereal, you're waking up, you're fasted, you have pure sugar high, and it's going to come right back down. So there's nothing there to balance out the sugar. No fibers, no healthy fats to really balance that out. So an omelet and plus a fruit, that could get them their sugar fix at that point in time. And giving kids a fruit really is never a battle. Vegetables can be a battle, but a kid will eat an apple. A kid will have a banana. A kid will have a peach. A kid will definitely have a cup of strawberries or a cup of blueberries. It's pretty easy to get that in. So we can have our healthy carbohydrates through fruit and then swap in for an omelet just to decrease sugar a little bit. And then another way in which we could decrease sugar a little bit is perhaps get rid of some of the fruit juices. I know a lot of people out there think fruit juices are a healthy alternative, but they're really not. If you're going to have an 8-ounce glass of fruit juice, you're looking at about 35 grams of pure sugar, which is 7 teaspoons of just pure sugar in something disguised as it's supposed to be healthy just because there's 60 milligrams of vitamin C in it. So you've got your pixie dust of vitamin C, and it says 100% of your daily vitamin C, but that small amount doesn't outweigh the amount of sugar in that juice. There's a reason why it's very, very, very sweet and why a lot of kids love it. It's because of that sugar that they get from it. So eat fruit instead of drink fruit, and then try and replace that cereal, and then just try and look at other areas in the day where you can try and mimic the same types of strategies to just reduce sugar intake a little bit. Moving forward here, because I think I could cover that for quite a while. Kids need to increase their protein intake, but more importantly, their high quality protein intake. So things like meat and things like eggs, those are incredibly high quality proteins that kids should have on a daily basis with at least their 3 square meals a day. So for example, instead of having the cereal with breakfast, we'll have an omelet, incredibly high quality source of protein. With lunch, well, we're sending our kid to school for lunch. So maybe instead of just giving them a peanut butter sandwich or like a peanut butter and honey sandwich, we give them a turkey sandwich, or we give them a ham and Swiss sandwich. So they're still having that convenient packaged thing that you're able to send them to school with, but there's a much higher quality source of protein involved in the meal. And then for dinner, Mom's normally got dinner already covered, doesn't she? Dinner's usually pretty good as it is. It's a square meal. There's normally meat, a starch, and some vegetables. Dinner is almost always good. If there's some sort of ham, turkey, some chicken, if it's going to be steak, if it's going to be, a type of burger or something like that. No matter what it's going to be, if you guys are having at-home taco night, which can actually be very healthy, depending on what you put in the tacos or the fajitas, there's already high-quality sources of protein in those dishes. So dinner's already pretty good, but it's normally breakfast and lunch where protein intake really suffers. And that's important to care about because what's the only thing that's going to repair muscle after exercise? It's what the muscle's made of. It's protein. It's a supply and demand chain. If we create muscular damage through youth hockey training or through a very hard game or a very hard practice, well, then it's a supply and demand chain. Yes, we need to replenish glycogen with carbohydrates after, but we also need to provide the body with high-quality amino acids that are going to play a role in muscular repair so that that athlete can recover and enter their next game, practice, or workout a much better version of themselves rather than a semi-recovered, semi-performing version of themselves. And that unfortunately almost always happens because breakfast and lunch are just afterthoughts for a lot of parents when it comes to cooking in terms of protein intake. So try and find a way to sneak some good high-quality protein in at each meal. And when you do this, you'll actually find that their sugar intake will naturally drop. Now, why is that? Protein intake is actually the #1 nutrient in the world of nutrition to increase feelings of satiety. Satiety is it's a term used for feelings of fullness. So what protein does when it digests and metabolizes, it sends certain neurochemicals from the stomach into receptors on the brain to say, okay, we are full, we are good to go, we are fine. protein is the number one most satiating nutrient. So when we take in protein with each meal, we naturally eat a little bit less. When we don't take in protein, we're naturally going to eat a little bit more because of the neurochemistry of our stomach and our brain saying, hey, I'm not exactly full yet, so let's keep going. There's a reason why you can sit down and have an entire bag of chips, because there's nothing producing satiety from that food. But you're not going to sit down and just eat an entire bag of chicken or an entire bag of steak or an entire bag of even something with a lot of fiber in it, like an apple. Eating one apple is, or let's say, let's use the example. If we're going to have a couple of glasses of juice, that's pretty easy to consume. You can do that no problem. And yet that could be upwards of 70 to 75 grams of carbohydrates, which would be the equivalent of 3 large apples. And you don't just sit down and eat 3 large apples. It would be incredibly difficult. And that's because fiber is also a satiety-producing agent as well. So when you have protein with each meal, you're naturally going to eat a little bit less sugar simply because you're not as hungry. And that's beneficial for youth athletes because you're doing something with their meal that's naturally causing them to eat healthier without telling them that they need to remove something, which is very important for their psychological habits in the long run. And it's very important for you not getting into daily fights with your youth athlete trying to get them to eat a little bit healthier. So it's a sneaky way to change a lot of the habits, not to mention it's excellent for hockey performance and body composition management. Next, we want to increase fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables, number one reason we want to increase their intake is because they contain a lot of fiber. And for the same reason as protein, they help increase feelings of satiety, so you're going to feel fuller and longer. If you have fiber within a meal, when you combine protein and fiber, that's the most powerful meal to increase feelings of satiety. But fruits and vegetables, they give you that fiber, which is going to increase the satiety. Boom, already good. We're naturally going to consume a little bit less sugar. We'll have a better body composition. Fiber also helps us go into the bathroom a lot more regularly. If your kid commonly runs into constipation issues or diarrhea issues, increasing their fiber intake can be something that can be beneficial for them. Fruit, like I said previously, is not normally a battle. Peaches, blueberries, strawberries, apples, bananas, these are all incredibly healthy for youth athletes, and it's not very hard to get them to consume it. But vegetables, on the other hand, can be a little bit hard to get them to consume it. Now, mom usually figures it out pretty good with dinner time, or maybe dad's cooking tonight and he's figured it out pretty good with dinner time. Lots of times you're at the table eating dinner with your family and you can get little Johnny to consume some vegetables with dinner. But it might be a little bit more difficult with lunch, and it's definitely going to be a lot more difficult with breakfast. Breakfast is normally just a bowl of cereal. But if it is an omelet, you can sneak some peppers in there, you can sneak some tomato in there, and you can sneak some spinach in there. All 3 of those cook very well within an omelet and actually enhance the flavor of the omelet and the texture of the omelet in a lot of different ways. Now, your kid might not like peppers, or they might not like spinach, or they might not like tomato. They might not like all 3 in there, but they're definitely gonna like 1 in there, or 1 or 2 in there. So it's just a great way you can sneak a serving of vegetables in with breakfast. And then for lunch, we can throw some vegetables in the sandwich that they are consuming at lunchtime, so they have their high quality protein and their vegetable serving there. At dinner, you're putting a serving of vegetable on the plate anyway. And then lastly, you can sneak some vegetables and some protein and some fruit with almost no sugar if you make some smoothies. Smoothies are delicious, and they're like the youth athlete's fountain of performance because you can put fruit, vegetables, protein all in one thing. It's delicious. They want to have it, and yet it's got minimal sugar, a ton of vitamins and minerals, lots of high quality protein, lots of good fiber, and the right carbohydrates that you want them to have that are going to improve their recovery, improve their health, improve their body composition, and just allow them to be a better hockey player. So smoothies are huge. Get creative with that and start producing more smoothies in a daily basis or a weekly basis, whatever it's going to be. When it comes to all of this stuff, like increasing protein, fruits, vegetables, decreasing sugar, don't try and do it all in one day. Instead, look at the entire week. Monday to Sunday. I know youth eating habits can be very difficult. I know youth eating habits and what they like, what they don't like, what they'll make a fuss about, what they won't make a fuss about. I know that that's an uphill battle for a lot of people. So just look at the entire week. Don't try and make all of these changes in one day. Look at the entire week and just see where you can add here, where you can add there. Maybe we have an omelet 3 days a week for breakfast, and they eat their old breakfast, the other 3 or 4 days. Maybe we do this. It doesn't all have to be in one day. But just look at the entire week and try and introduce some of this stuff. And maybe a smoothie is something you don't need to do every day. If you want to do it every day, if you want to do all this every day, that'd be perfect. But just try and slowly introduce one thing at a time in order to make this realistic for the long term. Next is increasing water. Increasing water is something that's going to be beneficial for health, body composition, and performance. Water is its own individual performance enhancer. So there's not just like in nutrition will enhance hockey performance, but water is its own whole world of performance enhancement. It's connected to every single biological reaction in the body. There's a reason why our body is 70% water and our muscle tissue is actually 75% water. It's involved in every single reaction. If a muscle is 75% water, how well do you think it's going to perform if it's dehydrated? How well do you think it's going to perform if all it gets is Coke and Pepsi? How well do you think it's going to perform if all it gets is fruit juices? It's not going to be on the same level. So we want to have a little bit more water. It's pretty easy to have them consume water pre, intra, and post game. Lots of times that just comes naturally. But having water with breakfast or sending them to school with just water instead of a juice box or whatever small detail you could introduce, that would be a great option for you. And maybe even if they do love juice, you could cut it. So maybe it's you pour half a glass of juice and then you put half the rest of the glass of water to try and dilute it a little bit. It's still delicious, it's still good, but it's not as concentrated of a sugar source. So just try and get creative with water. Water obviously also goes well in smoothies, making it kind of like the powerhouse for youth nutrition, but try and get more water in, because when you get more water in, the thirst mechanisms of the body are going to be a lot lower. And when the thirst mechanisms of the body are a lot lower, you naturally don't want as much soda, you naturally don't want as much fruit juice, you naturally don't want as much chocolate milk. Are any of those things terrible? No. You don't want to embed the mindset that any food is good or any food is bad within a youth hockey player. You don't really want to be doing that at that young of an age. But we know that water is good, and when we introduce more water, it's only going to have a positive effect. So try and sneak that in when and where you can. And lastly, for supplementation, youth athletes, I get this question a lot. Like, what should my kid be taking? The absolute basics. At this age, they should be developing a healthy relationship with food and learning what foods make their body feel good, rather than trying to make up for it with some supplements. The really only things that I recommend for youth athletes from a supplementation perspective is carbohydrate powder can be used during and after a game where required. Really just during a game and after a game you can have a smoothie and get your carbs from a banana or berries or something like that. Whey protein is something that's very safe for youth hockey players, and you can add into the smoothie as well to be a protein source. So, let's say 1 tablespoon of natural peanut butter, a half a banana, and a scoop of chocolate whey protein, or half a scoop of chocolate whey protein. Then you're going to have, a chocolate peanut butter banana smoothie. And like a kid's going to say no to that. And yet it has fiber, it has good carbohydrates, has good healthy fats, has a lot of protein in it. So I'm a big fan of whey protein isolate for youth athletes, just small servings, quarter scoop, half a scoop at a time. Carbohydrate powder for during the game for sure. And then other supplements they could have is maybe a multivitamin and some fish oil. But that's it. You know, that's absolutely it. Nothing else on top of that until, honestly, they are 16, 17, 18 years old, when they're way more mature and ready to take on a little bit more and starting to enter some very serious camps, or they know certain scouts are watching them or whatever it's going to be. But right now, only focus on healthy nutrition habits, because that's what's going to get you to your goals. Supplements are called supplements because they supplement your diet. They will never replace your diet. So that's very important to care about. Multi, fish oil, carb powder, protein. That's going to be it. And you want to make sure that you're doing it in good, safe amounts. That is something I shouldn't have to say. But this is essentially the physical aspect, the things that we can take action on right now for our youth hockey players. From a psychological perspective, this is where it's so important to approach this in a way that creates an environment for healthy nutrition habits. So I like to have an inclusive mindset rather than an exclusive mindset. So you can't say, okay, I listened to all that physical stuff. All right, Johnny, you know what we're going to do? No more sugar starting Monday. We're going to have a bunch of protein with each meal. We're going to have 12 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. We're going to have a glass of water with every single meal, and we're going to go on the supplements. We're going to do this thing. Like, you can't do that, right? You see adults do that at New Year's every single year, and yet how many of them drop off? You can't just get all extreme and go crazy with this, especially when you're forcing someone else to do it. So I like to have the inclusive approach rather than an exclusive approach. So we don't say, hey, you're removing sugar forever. We never even say that ever. What we do is we include a little bit of protein at breakfast, right? Instead of the cereal, we have the omelet. It's just as delicious, but we're reducing sugar without actually even saying anything. Instead of sending them to school with the peanut butter and honey sandwich, we're sending them to school with the ham and Swiss sandwich. We didn't actually say anything, but we reduced sugar and we increased protein intake. So two things where we didn't actually say anything at all. We just had a healthy switch, and then we're getting a much better overall daily intake for our youth hockey players, and we are including something which is going to naturally exclude other things. When you include certain things, there's a natural exclusion of other things, right? We include more protein, we have more satiety. We include more fruits and vegetables, we have more fiber, there's more satiety. We include more water, okay, where we're gonna have less soda, we're gonna have less juice, we're gonna have less chocolate milk. When we include things rather than exclude them, that's what creates a healthy habit, and that's what creates a healthy mindset towards themselves and towards food. Because when you look at the scientific literature, eating disorders do exist. And you know who has consistent eating disorders? Athletes. Athletes consistently have eating disorders, and it's almost always, created at a young age, where you're associating food with your body. You're associating food with your weight. You're associating food with what coach feels, right? You don't want to have any of these things. So we just include healthy options. So we have a healthy mindset with food, a healthy mindset with our body, and a healthy mindset with the sport that we're supposed to love. And that's not supposed to stress us out. So include things rather than exclude things. Next, no counting. Okay, I get this email a lot. I get this instant message a lot here at hockeytraining.com. It's that, hey, Dan, how many calories should a 7-year-old eat? Or, hey, Dan, how many grams of protein should my 8-year-old eat? You can never ask me that question. Never ask me that question, and never ask a dietitian that question. Never ask anybody that question, because you should just be having natural, healthy, good foods at this point in time and not counting anything. Counting is asking for psychological burnout of yourself, but also psychological burnout of your youth athlete. You don't develop a healthy relationship with numbers. It's just not how anybody thinks long-term for sustainability and good habit building. You want to teach them to eat healthy food, not teach them to crunch numbers and see what happens. Absolutely not something you want to do. I can't make myself any more clear on that. No counting at all. Zero counting. When they get to an adult age where the research actually more reflects their current physiology, maybe you can start counting. But absolutely no counting in the youth age. So we're including, we're not excluding, we're not counting a darn thing along the way, and we also have no goals. I don't mean you can't set any goals for them whatsoever, but I do mean do not set a goal for body weight and do not set a goal for body image. That's not what you want to do at a young age. If you've got a 7-year-old or 8-year-old who wants to lose weight and wants to be this exact poundage on the scale, they're already developing a bad relationship with their body, with food, and with the scale. And that is a terrible thing to see. So you don't want to have that. You don't want to set body image goals. You don't want to set body weight goals. All we want to do is to eat healthy foods that fuel our body in the right way to perform better at our sport in hockey, okay? And that's honestly the most optimal thing that you can do right now. Let's just say right now, 8-year-old Sidney Crosby comes up to me and his parents come up to me and they're like, okay, we've got this ultra prospect. What should we be doing right now? You know what I tell them to do? This stuff. This isn't taking the easy road. This isn't the basic stuff. There's not a secret formula after this. No, this is optimal right now. This is what is considered optimal right now. This will get you a 10 out of 10 result. So whether the Joe Schmo came up to me who was 8 years old, or Sidney Crosby came up to me who was 8 years old, or Connor McDavid came up to me who was 8 years old, they would all be doing this because this would get them the 10 out of 10 result now and in the long run. Okay? I hope this video made a lot of sense. I hope it gave you some good ideas for youth nutrition practices. And always let me know if you ever have any questions.